It's truly my honor to
Alright,
introduce
good evening, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, Mexico, working on an oil painting Awe. Alright, today I am going to hit the foreground flowers as the next step before reglazing the entire lower landscape portion, landscapes portion, and then redoing the flowers to give them more density and less mechanical of a placement. So here we go. I'm just going to hit larger flowers in the foreground with individual little petal blobs of bright cadmium yellow and some linseed oil and liquid.
Okay, so I've got a lot of slides and a lot of material, so I'll just get started and see how far we get. So I want to give a big thanks to the organizers, to the university, and to all of you for attending. I couldn't quite tell what to call this place. Is it Colorado University or the University of Colorado? And so I went back to my hotel and just wrote university on this slide. So I came this morning and I attended most of this morning's lectures. And the one word that came to my mind while I was listening to everybody was courage. I mean, people are crazy courageous to be talking about what they're talking about and doing what they're doing. So just want to hand it to everybody for carrying the torch and trying to advance the species. If you have questions, or if you want copies of my slides, feel free to contact me. That's my email address and on my website. Because there's quite a few slides and there's a lot of information in them. Oh, and so after my presentation this evening, I'm going to be selling and signing books too, so I can chat with people individually then as well. So the guiding principles, for the work after I completed my DMT study 20 years ago now, were the words of two mentors. One was a psychiatrist, Daniel Freeman, whose mantra about psychedelics were, if, so what? If DMT, causes these effects, so what? What's it good for? What does it mean? What can we learn from it? And another mentor was Dr. Willis Harman, who founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And the comment that he made to me one afternoon was that we had to, at the very least, enlarge the discussion about psychedelics. So at that time, that was in the early 90s, it was purely the brain chemistry model, some of the psychotherapy work. Those two ideas have been prompting me to continue with this work in a direction that some people have found surprising. And I suppose I ended up feeling as surprised as anybody else. So quite a few of the speakers have reviewed the psychedelic drugs, and they modify every component of consciousness: perception, emotion, mood, somatic body sensations, mental processes, cognition, volition, and will, sense of self. So one thing that people have spoken about is considerations in what to call these drugs. And there's a number of considerations, scientific versus popular, political correctness, and the baggage which has accrued. But the most important, I think, is accuracy. So the most common terms are psychedelic. The next most common term and the most common term you'll come across in the medical and the legal literature is hallucinogen. A more common expression is entheogen. And some older ones or more obscure ones are terms like psychotomimetic, consciousness or mind expanding, psychointegrators, or empathogens or impactogens. So the one which is the most common is the term psychedelic.
There we go.
Yeah, because it's the most generic term, I think it is the most accurate. Because these drugs can do anything. So quite a bit can happen. Maybe not much might happen at all. It might be good, might be bad, might be spiritual, might be boring. It's got a lot of accrued cultural and political baggage, but I think it's the most accurate term. So the next most common term is hallucinogen. But that's kind of a loaded term because voices. So visions and the voices aren't invariant, and it kind of begs the question regarding what is a hallucination. And it also, I think, overall judges the state as pathological, and the experience or what you're perceiving as unreal. So a more common term is entheogen, but I think that's kind of limiting as well, because what happens if you don't believe in spirituality or divinity? Can an atheist or a radical materialist have an entheogenic experience, and would they even want to take one in the first place? It would kind of close off a significant segment of people that might be interested in these substances. Psychotomimetic we can dispense with. It's not anything anybody would ever want to take. But still, it is being used in the European literature, and especially the German literature. It's kind of interesting how that term is lingered. So there's the expression, consciousness expanding or mind expanding, but I think that kind of is a pigeonholing kind of term too, because your mind might contract. It's important to use your words carefully. Obviously, so that's why I'm kind of belaboring the point. So Michael Winkelmann developed an expression of psychointegrator, but it's the same problem. Your mind may disintegrate instead. So Dave Nichols, developed the term impactogen or empathogen, in other words, to increase or to generate empathy or feeling connected with people, so he developed that term with respect to MDMA and related compounds, but those aren't really the classical psychedelics like DMT and psilocybin, LSD, mescaline. And also, they kind of limit the kind of experience you may have, because because you may not feel especially empathic or related, to the people that you're with. So I prefer the term psychedelic, and it still is the most popular, especially in this kind of a group. And it's also making inroads into the scientific and into the scientific literature to a greater extent as well. So there's all kinds of applications of the psychedelic drug state. The one I'll be emphasizing this evening is from the perspective of religion and spirituality. But obviously there's quite a few other fields which can be enhanced through the application of that state. and our understanding of that state can be enhanced through the application of that discipline. So it's kind of a bidirectional dynamic. The state can be understood through psychology, and psychology can be enlarged through the application and study of that state. So there's creativity, there's art, brain function, cultural kinds of issues, even cosmology. So DMT, a topic near and dear to my heart. So DMT stands for dimethyltryptamine. It's chemically related to melatonin and serotonin. It's naturally occurring, and it is made in plants. So it is made in plants and it's made in animals. In other words, it's endogenous. It's been studied for quite a long time, and it was actually determined 60 years ago that it was made in the lungs. And even though I speculated in my first DMT book about it being made in the pineal, that wasn't established until just a couple of years ago. So it was first discovered in psychedelic plants in the 1940s, and then was discovered to be psychoactive in the 1950s, and then it was was determined to exist in the body fluids and the body tissues of mammals. I think starting off with it began with rabbits and then rodents, mice and rats, and then it was discovered in humans. Spinal fluid, blood, and urine. So one of the very interesting things about DMT is that DMT in the blood is transported into the brain across the blood-brain barrier, and there's only very few compounds that the brain treats that way. Usually these are critical compounds for brain function, such as blood sugar. So it's as if the brain requires DMT for normal function. So normal function of the brain is normal consciousness. So you can think of a narrow window of DMT levels in the brain being necessary for the cohesion of everyday consciousness. So more specifically, a couple of years ago in Wisconsin, a group there discovered that the genetic apparatus for making DMT is active in the retina as well. So even more to the point that DMT naturally occurring, they modify everyday consciousness and specifically for the world and visual consciousness.
Feet nearly fell asleep, crouched like that for a minute, but that gets some foreground placement, some good-sized blossoms. Alright, I still have some time left on this clip and a little bit of yellow left, so I think I'm going to go back up and do some skin glazing with a little bit more. I think I'll use Naples yellow, or maybe some cadmium yellow to warm it up a little bit. Contrast it to these pink trees more so.
We don't really know if DMT levels increase at birth or death. So I speculate about those things in my DMT book, but I don't think I made the distinction as clearly.
Or actually,
regarding what speculation
in order to capture what I just did with the globs and give it all scale, I think I'll just zoom back.
Increase in non-drug states that resemble DMT states.
Put it about right there. It'll help with the light too.
So like near-death experiences or dreams and meditation.
Eidolon can have a cameo while she naps. Right on.
And also, I get an email probably.
So I'm going to mix up some cadmium yellow real quick into this cadmium yellow light. Slightly warmer tint.
There are no data that pineal calcification has any effect on anything other than perhaps melatonin concentration go down. Yeah, and we can't really decalcify the pineal. There's no way to do that. I suppose you could use ultrasound, but that would be kind of scary. I'm sorry, we don't know if DMT does.
Alright, need a large brush. This makes for a nice effect on the final process movie. I've done this a couple of times. It's kind of cool. Watch it blend up. It's very cool watching it blend up at like 6,000x speed. Alright. Not sure what song I'm going to boo this one to yet.
That's a good research question.
I think I'm going to use Cradle of Filth's Prey for the vampire portrait. Seems appropriate. Great rhythm to that song. Alright, that might need a little more linseed. That's pretty opaque. Alright, I'm going to thin that out a little bit more.
Concentrations of DMT in the blood compared to normals. Differential responsiveness in schizophrenics compared to normal responses. And there were some early attempts to blockade DMT synthesis in schizophrenics in order to modify the symptoms, but those projects never got off the ground after the Controlled Substances Act. So my study took place at the University of New Mexico Medical School. It started in 1990, ended in 1995. We studied about 60 normal volunteers. We gave it intravenously. As a dose-response study, we gave a number of small doses, medium doses, and large doses. And I took careful notes, and we drew a lot of blood. Well, the next study after that was a tolerance study. We were trying to see if the response to DMT diminished with repeated dosing. So we gave a large dose every half hour 4 times in the space of a morning. And so that was a wild study. Well, so people didn't develop tolerance. They got, as stoned the 4th time as they did the 1st. So also we were interested in characterizing the specific subtype of the serotonin receptor mediating some of the effects. And we gave a lot of DMT over those 5 years, almost 400 doses. So as quite a few of you know, when you take a full dose of DMT, it starts to work very quickly. There's a rush of inner pressure and acceleration. And then within a minute or so, there's the experience of the separation of the mind and body. And you enter into a world of bright, rapidly moving light. And your sense of self is maintained. There's not really very often an emerging of the white light. There's intense emotion sometimes, and sometimes there's not much emotion at all. And it's usually, contains some intelligences of some sort or another, more or less, recognizable. They may look.
All the eyelashes will be done again, but it's important to get a little glaze work building beneath them as well to give them some dimension, as well as variety of tone.
Even the patterns
So stays in sync with the development of everything.
And it's quite highly interactive.
I like those thick lines that are remaining. I'll leave those.
Unified with anything, and you're dealing with all that stuff.
Use up
It's
the rest
dealing
of
with
this.
you, you're dealing with it. There's a lot of give and take. You're able to control your awareness. It isn't a passive state in as much as
Gotta leave
you're
that.
immobilized, but your mind is active.
Take a month to dry. Fuck it.
Energy.
That's nice. A couple more of those.
So since I stopped my work 20 years ago, I've been thinking about it, obviously, most of the time. And so one of the things that has been helpful in thinking about the spiritual or the religious properties of these substances, more of any spiritual experience is
All right, cool. How's our time?
What I call a mystical unity state.
8 minutes. Tempted to make this one a double session. So I would like to cut in some cerulean blue, light cerulean blue, or maybe a Prussian blue mix. coming down from the upper right hand corner and maybe working its way to start developing some clouds around her wing. Let me ponder for a minute. Clean my brush. What else could I hit in one session without having to do another clip? Alright, well.
So compared to that is the kind of state I refer to as the interactive relational one. The sense itself is maintained and fully interact with concepts and images that are found in the yellow. And that's more typical of
a very nice glow around that.
When you're being with God, you're interacting with God, as opposed to becoming one with God. So far, so good. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. It's a lot. Just put your thinking caps on. And this is a smart tool. Well, okay. The models. So what is the nature of the DNT world? Is it real or unreal? Is it inner or outer? Is it objective or is it subjective? And so also, what is it good for? Other than, it's interesting. It's unlike anything else you'll ever see. But still, what's it good for? Other than, I guess, convincing you that there is something else for the next.
Alright, I think that does it for this session.
Well, for the first three models I'll be discussing, I'll propose the unreality of the DNT state. The first one is the brain biology model, neurotheology. It's your brain on drugs, generates divisions and devices. And things are configured that way in order to, what took a slow evolutionary advantage to people that have those kinds of experiences. You might be more altruistic, you might be more empathic or compassionate, you might be more creative.
Alright. Rather like the ridges of glaze left by the heavy brush work that I just did on the or skin tone around the eye tone around the skin. But those will dry slowly, but with a great effect and some nice light absorption as well. So that sets that up. I'll redo the eyelashes, eyebrows, and things like that again and again as the painting develops. But for now, that gets a pretty nice solid layer and starts to get the details into the 4 lower ground dimensions. And this kind of rhymes with those thick skin glaze ridges and gives this sun some nice glow and a little more presence before I do another range of mountains with orange. But for the moment, I think that does it. So that's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting. Have a good night, Earth.